If you've ever been to Anambra, you know one thing for sure: food is everywhere. From the moment the sun rises, the streets come alive with the sizzle of frying oil and the steady rhythm of wooden ladles clanking against iron pots. On every corner, someone is selling something. There's the woman roasting plantain over a wire mesh, the man expertly flipping puff-puff into bubbling oil, and the countless roadside canteens where traders, riders, and bankers all squeeze together at tables, sharing the same steaming plates of rice, soup, or stew. But in the middle of all these options, in the heart of Onitsha, there was one place that stood above the rest. A place where once you ate there, you never wanted to eat anywhere else. It wasn't the biggest restaurant. It wasn't the fanciest. Just a wooden house with a colored door and a simple cloth banner that read, "Best food in Anambra." At first, it seemed like an exaggerated claim. After all, in a city where everyone believed their food was the best, what made this place so special? But here's the thing: nobody ever disagreed. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor. If you found yourself sitting at one of the restaurant's wobbly wooden tables and taking that first bite, something changed. Some swore the rice was richer than any they'd ever tasted. Others claimed the pepper soup had healing powers that after eating it, fevers broke, headaches disappeared, and joints stopped aching. The woman who ran the place was known simply as the cook, but her real name was Adama. She was a plump, middle-aged woman with a face that seemed permanently frozen in a soft, knowing smile. Her skin was the warm, rich brown of roasted groundnuts, and her eyes had the kind of gentleness that made people feel at home. She moved through her shop with quiet confidence, her soft hands dishing out perfect portions of rice, soup, and meat. Never too much, never too little. Her voice was soothing, almost musical. Whether she was calling out an order or responding to a customer, she always spoke with the warmth of a mother talking to her child. She had been running the restaurant for over a decade. People would travel for miles just to eat at her place. Drivers took detours. Workers timed their breaks. Even those who had their favorite canteens suddenly found themselves making excuses. Let me just see what the hype is about. But once they ate there, they never ate anywhere else again. And that was the strange part. It wasn't just about the taste. It was something more. At first, people thought maybe it was her secret ingredient. Maybe she had some rare type of pepper. Or maybe she cooked with special herbs that gave her food an extra kick. No one had ever seen her buy ingredients. Other food vendors went to the market every morning. You'd see them haggling over bags of rice, selecting the freshest tomatoes, fighting over the price of onions. But not the cook. Nobody had ever seen her carrying baskets or bargaining with traders. Her food never ran out. Even when her shop was packed with customers from morning till night, there was always enough. Other restaurants had to close when their pots emptied. But at the cook's, a fresh batch was always ready, steaming hot as if it had just been cooked. Nobody had ever seen her cook. You'd hear the sounds of cooking, the clatter of pots, the bubbling of stew. But no one had ever actually seen her in the act. And yet, nobody questioned it. Because once they'd tasted her food, it was like they couldn't question it. And the people of the city were always too busy to even start figuring out things like that. Even her workers, young boys and girls who ran in and out of the shop, serving plates and clearing tables, knew nothing. Nobody pressed further. Because as long as they could eat, they didn't care. Emeka, a university student struggling to pay his fees, had just gotten a job at the cook's. Emeka was the kind of person who never liked to ask for help. He had grown up in a small, crowded apartment in Mushin, where privacy was a luxury, and survival was a daily competition. The firstborn in a family of 4, he had learned early that if you wanted something, you had to fight for it. His mother, a tired but resilient woman, sold vegetables in the market, stretching every naira to make sure her children had food on the table. His father, a man who had disappeared years ago, leaving behind nothing but an old photograph and a list of unpaid debts. Emeka wasn't bitter about it. Life was what it was. But right now, life wasn't just hard, it was crushing. He was in his 3rd year at the university, studying business administration at Anambra State University. School fees were due in a month, and his account balance was nothing but a cruel joke. His mother had sent him what she could, 5,000 naira. But it was barely enough for transport and daily meals, let alone tuition. And if he didn't pay on time, he'd be forced to drop out. That wasn't an option. So when he heard that the cook's kitchen was hiring, he didn't hesitate because the pay was good and could make up for his school fees, and since the work came in shifts so he could be doing the evening shifts. Emeka arrived at the cook's kitchen just before 6 p.m., dressed in a worn-out t-shirt and a pair of faded jeans. The restaurant was already packed, customers spilling out onto the wooden benches outside, their hands busy with steaming plates of rice, soup, and meat. A small group of Okada riders sat by the entrance, noisily tearing into their goat meat. Behind them, a man in a tailored suit ate silently, his fingers skillfully picking apart a piece of soft pounded yam. The cook's kitchen was one of the few places in Anambra where status didn't matter. New boy, Abi? Emeka turned to see a young man, about his age, tying an apron around his waist. I'll be Daniel, the guy said, handing Emeka an apron. Oh yeah, make we start. Daniel showed him the ropes, how to serve, where to stack the plates, how to handle difficult customers. It wasn't hard work, but it was fast. The plates never stopped coming and the customers never stopped ordering. By 10 p.m., Emeka was sweating. His arms ached from carrying heavy trays, but the job wasn't too bad. In fact, it was almost too easy. Then, just as he was wiping down a table, he heard it. A noise, faint, almost unnoticeable, coming from the kitchen. It wasn't the usual clatter of pots and pans. It was something else. A soft humming, like a woman singing under her breath. A bucket shifting, the sound of liquid being poured. Emeka turned to Daniel. Who's still cooking at this time? Daniel froze for a split second before forcing a smile. Nah, the cook. At this time of the night? Daniel grabbed a tray and walked away. Just do your work. Emeka frowned. Something about the way Daniel avoided eye contact made his stomach tighten. He turned to one of the older workers, a quiet man named Baba Femi, who had been working there for years. Baba, what's inside that kitchen? Baba Femi gave him a long, steady look before leaning in and whispering, never enter the kitchen after dark. The words sent a chill down Emeka's spine. Why? He asked. Baba Femi shook his head. No questions. We are not concerned about you. Then he stood up and walked away. Emeka tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the work, tried to tell himself it was none of his business. But the thought kept creeping back into his mind. What was the cook doing in that kitchen so late at night? And why did nobody else seem to question it? By 11:30 p.m., the last customer had left and the workers started closing up. Emeka wiped down the last table, stole a glance at the kitchen door and felt his pulse quicken. The noises were still there. The humming, the shifting, the slow, careful pouring. Daniel locked up the front door and turned to Emeka. You fit, go now. You know stay behind? Emeka asked. Daniel let out a short laugh. Stay for wet 10? My shift don't finish. One by one the workers left. All of them. Nobody stayed behind. Nobody even looked at the kitchen door. The cook was still inside. Alone. Emeka hesitated. Then he stepped outside, inhaled the cool night air and told himself to forget about it. Whatever was happening in that kitchen wasn't his problem. Emeka barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the humming again. He imagined the cook, alone in the kitchen, pouring something into her pots. He thought about the way her food never ran out, about the way customers never stopped craving it. Something wasn't right, and the worst part? He had to go back the next day because he didn't have a choice. Emeka wasn't the type to get scared easily, but for the past few months the feeling kept eating at him. He had been working at the cook's kitchen long enough to get used to the strange rules. Never enter the kitchen after dark. Never ask where the ingredients came from. Never question why the food never ran out. He had seen the way customers reacted after eating there. The satisfaction, the obsession, and he had ignored it. But every time he tried to sleep, he kept seeing that kitchen door in his mind. Something was behind it. Something he wasn't supposed to see. And the curiosity was killing him. Daniel, his colleague, once joked about the never enter the kitchen after dark rule. If you like yourself, just mind your business. Even me. I never enter that kitchen once. And I don't plan to. Emeka had laughed it off at the time. But now, standing in front of the kitchen door, heart pounding, palms sweaty, he wasn't laughing anymore. Because tonight, for the first time, he was going to break that rule. It was almost midnight. The last plate had been cleared. The last customer had left. The cook had gone home. She left earlier that day. The other workers had left too. Except Emeka. He stayed behind, pretending to clean, waiting until the street outside was silent. Then he turned to the kitchen door. His hands trembled as he reached for the handle. He took a deep breath, and slowly he pushed it open. The door creaked. The air inside was thick with the scent of hot oil, pepper, and something else he couldn't place. He stepped in, his eyes scanning the room. First, everything looked normal. The giant pots, the wooden spoons, the shelves stacked with plates. But then he saw the bowls. A row of large metal bowls, neatly arranged on the counter. Each one filled with a thick yellowish liquid. First he thought it was oil. But something felt off. The color was too cloudy. The texture too watery. Emeka's stomach twisted. His mind screamed at him to walk away. But the realization hit him so hard he almost collapsed. It wasn't oil. It was urine. The cook was cooking with her own urine. Emeka slapped a hand over his mouth to stop himself from gagging. He staggered back, knocking over a wooden stool. The sound echoed through the empty restaurant. He didn't wait to see if anyone heard it. He turned and ran. For the next 3 days, Emeka didn't go to work. His phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls from the cook. Texts from Daniel. Guy, you day sick. Omo, the cook day ask of you, oh. You no one come work again. He ignored all of them. He stayed in his room, barely speaking to his roommates. He tried to eat. He couldn't. Rice tasted like sand in his mouth. Gari made him nauseous. Even bread and tea, the easiest thing to eat, felt like chewing paper. No matter what he tried, nothing satisfied him. And that was when the real horror set in. Because there was only one thing his body craved. The cook's food. By the 5th day, Emeka felt like he was dying. His hands shook. His stomach twisted in pain. His head ached so badly he could barely think. His roommates noticed. Emeka, you sure say you never carry malaria. Make we go hospital. He waved them off. How was he supposed to explain that the only thing that could fix him was the very thing he was running from? That night, as he lay in bed, drenched in sweat, he finally broke. He grabbed his phone, scrolled to the last message from Daniel, and typed, I day come work tomorrow. The next evening, he walked back into the restaurant. His legs felt weak. His mouth was dry. But the moment he stepped inside, the smell hit him. That familiar, rich, mouth-watering aroma. His stomach growled so loudly, one of the customers turned to look at him. And then he saw the cook. She was standing behind the counter. Same soft smile. Same plastic water bottle in her hand. She didn't look surprised to see him. She didn't even ask why he'd been gone for days. She just smiled wider and said, Welcome back, my pecan. I know say you go come. And the worst part? Emeka knew she was right. Because no matter how hard he had fought it, no matter how much he had tried to resist, he was already hooked. Desperate, Emeka visited an old herbalist deep in a place called Okija, still in Anambra. Emeka had never been to Ipe before. And if he had a choice, he would never have come. The roads were terrible. The air smelled of burning wood. And the deeper he went, the more the buildings faded into thick bushes and eerie silence. The bus driver that brought him had looked at him strangely when he gave his destination. You sure say nah here you on go? The man had asked, eyeing him through the rearview mirror. Yes, Emeka had replied, gripping his phone tightly. Even though there was barely any network here, the driver said nothing else. He simply grunted, dropped Emeka off at the last stop, and drove away without looking back. Now, standing alone in front of a mud house, Emeka wasn't so sure this was a good idea. But he was desperate, too desperate to turn back. The door creaked open before Emeka could knock. A man stood there, old, hunched, with deep wrinkles carved into his dark skin. His eyes, sharp and calculating, studied Emeka for a long moment before he finally stepped aside. "Enter." Emeka hesitated, but forced himself to step in. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs. Strange symbols covered the wooden walls, and in the middle of the room, on a small mat, sat an iron bowl filled with a dark, bubbling liquid. The old man sat cross-legged on the floor and gestured for Emeka to do the same. "Speak," he said simply. Emeka swallowed hard, and then he told his story. The old man listened without saying a word. His face gave nothing away, but when Emeka finally finished, the man nodded slowly. "You are cursed." Emeka's breath hitched. "Cursed? But I didn't do anything. I only ate the food." "That is why you are cursed," the herbalist cut in. He reached for a small clay pot and poured something into the iron bowl. The liquid inside sizzled, releasing a thick white smoke. "The cook's food is not ordinary," the old man continued, his voice calm but firm. "It is bound by something unnatural, and you, like many others, have fallen under its hold." Emeka's stomach churned. "But how?" The old man stirred the bowl, watching the smoke curl into strange shapes. "Her urine is not just urine." "What do you mean?" "It is a binding spell," the old man said. "A spell that ties the soul of whoever consumes it." Emeka felt sick. It was worse than he thought. He had imagined a lot of things, maybe just juju. But this was something else entirely. "How do I break it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man sighed, shaking his head. Then he looked Emeka straight in the eye and said, "You must make her eat her own food." Emeka froze. A cold chill crawled up his spine. "Make her eat her own food," he echoed. The old man nodded, and that was when it truly hit Emeka. He had worked at the cook's for months. He had seen her cook, serve, and even pack leftovers for customers. But one thing he had never seen, not once, was the cook eating her own food. His mouth went dry. "She never eats it," he murmured, more to himself than to the old man. The old man didn't respond. He didn't need to, because deep down Emeka already knew the truth. The cook's food wasn't meant for her. It was only meant for others, for people like him. And now he had only one way out. He had to do the impossible. He had to make the cook eat her own food, and if he failed, he didn't even want to think about what would happen. Emeka barely remembered the journey back. His mind raced with one question. How the hell was he going to do this? The cook was no fool. She never ate her own food. He needed to be smart. He needed a plan. And whatever he was going to do, he had to do it soon, because the cravings were getting worse. And he knew if he didn't break free now, he never would. Emeka barely slept that night. He lay on his spring bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. His body was weak. He hadn't eaten properly in days. Nothing satisfied him anymore, except the thought of going back to the cook's. The cravings were unbearable. But he knew if he returned without a plan, he would never leave again. The next day, which was on a Saturday, the only day Emeka worked morning and afternoon shifts, Emeka walked into the restaurant as if nothing was wrong. The air was thick with the familiar smell of egusi and jollof rice. But now it made his stomach turn. The cook was already behind the counter, her colorful wrapper tied tightly around her waist, her thick arms stirring a steaming pot of ogbono soup. She saw Emeka and grinned, revealing her gap teeth. "Ah, my boy, you dondi recover. You no come yesterday." Emeka forced a smile. "Ah, mama. Body no too strong. But I day okay now." She scoffed. "Nah, because you never chop my food. Come, make I serve you small." Emeka's throat tightened. "Later, mama. Make I serve customers first." She nodded and turned back to her pot. Good. He had time. Now he just had to wait for the perfect moment. Lunch hour was madness. The small restaurant was packed. Customers shouted their orders. Bowls clattered. The air was filled with thick laughter and the sizzling of frying meat. The cook was busy, as always, moving from one pot to another, dishing food with impressive speed. And that was when Emeka saw it. Her bottle? A small blue plastic bottle. the same one she always carried. She never drank from the cups or sachet water like everyone else. Always her own bottle. That was it. That was his chance. Emeka glanced around. Everyone was too busy eating to notice him. Heart pounding, he unscrewed the cap of her bottle and poured in a spoonful of soup from the large metal pot. Emeka stepped back and wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans. Now all he could do was wait. Seconds turned to minutes. Minutes turned to hours. The cook moved around as usual, laughing, shouting at customers, giving Emeka orders. And then it happened. She reached for her bottle, uncapped it, tilted it to her lips and took a sip, and immediately she vanished. The restaurant fell into chaos. Screams. Plates crashed to the ground. Customers jumped to their feet and ran away, their eyes wide with fear. "Where the cook?" someone shouted. "She just stay here now. Jesus Christ. No, be human being, oh!" Another shouted while running. Emeka stood frozen in the middle of it all, his heart hammering in his chest. He had done it. He had broken the curse. But the nightmare was far from over, because that was when the real horror began. For weeks, nobody could eat properly. Restaurants across Ikorodu were empty. No matter what they tried, no other food satisfied them. Not jollof rice, not umla, not even their mother's home-cooked meals. It was like their bodies had forgotten what real food tasted like. But slowly, painfully, the spell began to wear off. Their appetites returned. Food tasted normal again. Life went on. But the cook's shop remained closed, abandoned, and to this day, nobody knows who she was, where she came from, or where she went. Moral of the story: 1. Be careful what you consume. Not everything that looks good is good for you. Just because something is popular or addictive doesn't mean it's safe. 2. Curiosity can save or destroy you. Emeka's curiosity led him to uncover the truth, but it also almost cost him his freedom. Sometimes seeking knowledge is necessary, but other times, ignorance might be bliss. 3. Not everyone who serves you has good intentions. The cook appeared friendly and welcoming, but she had a dark secret. This teaches us to be cautious and not blindly trust everyone, especially when something feels off. 4. Addiction can be dangerous. The customers couldn't eat anything else because they were unknowingly addicted. This reflects how addictions, whether to food, habits, or even people, can control our lives without us realizing it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting stories.